Sean Hannity is not happy about the populists, and he made that clear during a recent episode of his show. Let's watch.
I've even heard some Trump supporters say they want to soak the rich. You sound like Bernie Sanders. You want to soak the rich. When I didn't have any money and I was a contractor, I never got hired by a poor person. In my 10 years in the restaurant business, I never got a tip from a poor person. No, I want a thriving economy where Americans have high-paying career jobs.
There's actually data showing that those who are lower on the socioeconomic ladder tend to give more to charity than incredibly wealthy individuals. But nonetheless, that was Sean Hannity, who is not happy about a trend he's seeing in the United States, a trend that he's seeing even within the Republican electorate. And that trend has to do with populism. This fury that Americans are feeling over growing inequality and the fact that the corporate world has completely taken over our political system, has completely bought our politicians, along with certain media figures like the one you just heard from. And while Hannity clearly doesn't understand why Americans of all political persuasions want to soak the rich, most Americans understand that it does have to do with ever-growing wealth inequality, and we have plenty of evidence to prove it. So let's start with this. The typical Fortune 500 CEO had already made more money by January 2nd than the average US worker will make this entire year. Okay, so not the average MAGA supporter, not the average woke liberal, but the average American worker. And this is where I think Americans of all political persuasions find common ground. And if they're willing to work together to hold their politicians accountable to ensure that they're actually serving us, the American people, as opposed to the corporate overlords that they've been serving, that might cut into some of the money that people like Sean Hannity have been happily making all these years. Now, and by the way, happily making as a mouthpiece for corporate America. Here's another stunning statistic that has to do with the holiday season specifically. We've talked about consumer debt and how it's at record highs. Well, a lot of Americans felt that they had no choice but to take out more debt in order to afford the holidays. Over a third of Americans took on debt this holiday season in order to make seasonal purchases like gifts. And that's according to a December survey by Retail Dive. And the amount of debt that Americans are taking out during the holidays is increasing more and more year after year. So let's take a look at the next graphic that shows you that consumers took on an average debt of $1,181 this holiday season, up from the $1,028 in 2023, with the vast majority of shoppers using credit cards, store cards, and buy now, pay later services, which are a disaster, to make purchases. 60% of consumers who took on debt say they were stressed doing it, probably because it's not just that they're taking on some debt for the holiday season, it's that they're already drowning in debt just to afford the basics. Certainly, the era of inflation during the Biden administration has played a huge role in making it more difficult for Americans to afford basic items that they need for their households. And so, yeah, this is a huge issue. And I understand that rage. It doesn't matter like what your political identity is. If you're a working class American, you know exactly where the anger and frustration is coming from, and you know that it's justified. It's hard for someone like Hannity, who makes millions of dollars anchoring on Fox News, to understand it because he's not hungry for anything, okay? He's good. So for him to sit there and fearmonger about populists is hilarious to me. What do you think, Cenk?
Yeah, so many things here. First of all, him saying, I never got a tip from a poor person. Really? You worked at a restaurant and you never got a tip from a poor person? Like, what, you think like the poor people are some sort of like monsters and they come into restaurants, but they leave zero tip? I mean, he's just such a jerk. And he has such contempt for non-rich people. And it oozes from everything that he says. So he's old school right-wing media. And one of the things I realized when I went on a lot of these right-wing shows is this is not the same right-wing media that we've known. In some ways, on social issues, they're more radical than even Fox News was. But on populism and economic issues, they're not at all where Fox News was. So what Sean Hannity is saying is classic old school right-wing media. The poors should shut up and know their role. You middle class, you should also shut up and understand that the most valuable people in the country are the very rich. We give you jobs, we give you tips, we give you everything. You should just be thanking us, okay? And that is old school establishment propaganda. Remember, right wing and left wing and Fox News and MSNBC is just good cop, bad cop. Establishment Democrats, establishment Republicans, good cop, bad cop. They're driving towards the same thing. The rich and the powerful should remain rich and powerful, and the rest of you should know your role. And so to me, his statement there is proof positive that I'll just personalize it to me, that I was right, that there's now a different base for the right wing. Doesn't mean that they're all angels or they agree with us on everything. But look at Sean Hannity complaining about his own base. Say, what are you guys doing? You guys sound like Bernie Sanders. I told you. Some of them, when you go talk to them on economic issues, they sound like us. Take a yes for an answer. I'm begging you, take yes for an answer. So those are folks that we can go and convince to form a populist bloc that Sean Hannity's of the world and Fox News will despise. And I got news for you, MSNBC will also despise it because they are the establishment. And now you see Sean Hannity panicking over the new right-wing base, and I love it.
Yeah, and one other thing that I'll say, because this is the kind of information that pisses off a lot of people, again, across the political spectrum, working class Americans. Let's go to the last graphic here, where More Perfect Union posts that the 12 richest people in America have a combined wealth of over $2 trillion. In contrast, the poor 50% of America, about 167 million people, have a combined net worth of 3.8 trillion. So it just helps you to understand how much, I mean, you want to talk about a redistribution of wealth. There has been a multi-decade redistribution of wealth from the bottom to the top. And to the anti-war component of Trump's base, it's not just that we're using our resources in foreign wars and conflicts that we shouldn't be involved in. I get the sense that they also understand that the war machine is another way to redistribute wealth from the bottom to the top. Because think about it, we're the ones, the working class Americans who pay their taxes. Huge component of that, a huge chunk of that goes to the military industrial complex. A country like Israel that had, an economic surplus in 2021 is somehow entitled to like tens of billions of dollars in US taxpayer money to afford their weapons for the brutality they're carrying out in Gaza? How does that make any sense? So look, I think that there's power in numbers. And I think for the first time, populist Americans on both the right and the left realize that maybe there are some issues where there's agreement and we can work together. Let's see if that actually comes to fruition, because certainly there are people who don't want to accomplish a damn thing and like their, partisan corner where they can point to the other side and moralize about how they're allegedly better than the other side.
Yeah. So first, shout out to a YouTube member, Phil J, who said, I was poor and I tipped. And Phil, I'm right there with you. I was poor for a long, long time in my life. And when I went to restaurants, what did I stiff the waiters and waitresses? No, if you're going to a restaurant, you tip. And Hannity is such a jerk. He has such contempt for anyone who isn't wealthy. It oozes from him. So and look, guys, I'm not in favor of like this whole eat the rich stuff. Hating the rich for being rich is not the point at all. It's absurd. No, what I'm against is when some of the wealthy rig the rules in their favor. When they donate to politicians and then have the politicians say, oh yeah, I'll give it another $100 billion to the defense contractors, and their executives get unbelievably rich. I'll give $30 billion in oil subsidies. I'll give corporate tax cuts. I'll give deregulation, et cetera. That is how they rig the rules through money and politics and then redistribute it from the middle class mainly to the very top. And it's gross. And that injustice is what's gnawing at the right wing base and the left wing base. We've always hated it. And finally, a poll that almost never changes. 76% of Americans believe we should increase taxes on the rich. And that has held true for so long, right around that 3/4 of Americans number. But you never see that in media because Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, etc., they're all part of the establishment and they don't want to ever share that fact with you. If they said all the time on the air, well, 3/4 of Americans wanted to raise taxes on the rich, 3/4 of Americans want to raise taxes on the rich, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, then there might be pressure to raise taxes on the rich. And that is the very last thing Sean Hannity wants, Fox News wants, anyone in establishment media or politics wants. But it's a new day in America, and this populist movement, it's got a lot of issues. It's not perfect by a long shot, but it's actual human beings, actual Americans rebelling against guys like Sean Hannity. And that is a beautiful day in America.
All right.